What if I told you that there's a state of consciousness where you can literally practice courage, where you can rehearse difficult conversations, explore impossible landscapes, and train your mind to recognize when you're caught in patterns of reactivity, all while you sleep? Welcome back to Beyond the Veil. I'm Elliot Gray, and if you listened to our first episode, you'll remember we explored the ancient question of why we dream. Today, we're going somewhere even more fascinating, into the realm of lucid dreaming, and more importantly, into what I'm calling lucid living. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, oh great, another show about how to control your dreams and fly around like Superman. And yes, we'll talk about that, because flying dreams are genuinely amazing. But what we're really exploring today is something much deeper. How awareness cultivated in the dream state can fundamentally transform the quality of your waking life. I have to be honest with you, when I first started practicing lucid dreaming about 8 months ago, I thought it was mostly just cool party tricks, you know? Like, hey, check this out, I can turn into a dragon in my dreams. But what I discovered was something I never expected. Learning to wake up in dreams taught me how to wake up in life. So whether you're completely new to lucid dreaming or you've been practicing for years, today we're going to explore how this ancient Tibetan practice can become a gateway to living with greater awareness, compassion, and freedom. We'll also dive into a beautiful nightly intention setting ritual that has completely transformed my relationship with sleep. What is lucid dreaming, really? Let's start with the basics, because I think there's a lot of confusion about what lucid dreaming actually is. The simple definition is becoming aware that you're dreaming while you're still in the dream. But that definition doesn't capture the profound shift in consciousness that can occur when this happens. Picture this. You're in a dream. Maybe you're back in high school taking a test you didn't study for. Classic anxiety dream, right? But suddenly, something clicks. You look around and think, wait a minute. I graduated from high school 15 years ago. This isn't real. I'm dreaming. That moment of recognition, that's lucidity. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people, when they first become lucid, immediately try to change the dream. They want to fly, or make someone appear, or turn the nightmare into something pleasant. And that's natural. I mean, if you suddenly realized you were in a virtual reality where anything was possible, you'd probably want to experiment too. But in Tibetan dream yoga, becoming lucid is just the beginning. The real practice is maintaining that awareness, that recognition of the dreamlike nature of experience without immediately trying to control everything. It's about learning to be present with whatever arises, even in the fluid, changeable world of dreams. Dr. Stephen LaBerge, who's probably the most famous Western researcher of lucid dreaming, describes it as dreaming with consciousness intact. But I think there's an even more beautiful way to understand it. Lucid dreaming is practicing the art of being awake within any state of consciousness. I remember my first really stable lucid dream. I was walking through this incredible forest, trees that seemed to be made of light, with leaves that chimed like bells when the wind moved through them. And I realized I was dreaming. But instead of immediately trying to fly or change the scene, I just stood there. I felt this incredible sense of presence, of being fully awake and aware within this impossible, beautiful world. And that's when it hit me. This quality of awareness, this ability to recognize when I'm caught up in the contents of experience rather than being present with experience itself. This was exactly what I needed to cultivate in my waking life too. See, most of the time, we're not really awake, even when we think we are. We're lost in thoughts about the past, worried about the future, reacting automatically to whatever triggers our habitual patterns. We're essentially sleepwalking through our days, just as unconscious as we are in our regular dreams. But lucid dreaming trains a very specific capacity, the ability to recognize when you're caught in a dream and wake up within it. And once you develop that capacity in the dream state, something remarkable happens. You start to recognize the dreamlike quality of waking experience too. The Tibetan perspective, mind training. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's this beautiful concept called bardo. It means intermediate states, or gap. The Tibetans identify 6 different bardos, 6 different states of consciousness that we move through. There's the bardo of waking life, the bardo of dying, the bardo of the after-death state, and crucially for our discussion, the bardo of dreaming. According to this tradition, all of these states are essentially the same in nature. They're all displays of mind, all equally empty of solid, permanent existence. The only difference is how clearly we recognize this fact. Dream yoga practitioners train to become lucid not just for the fun of it, but because the dream state is considered an ideal laboratory for developing this recognition. In dreams, everything is obviously mind-created. The laws of physics don't apply. People can transform into animals. You can be in multiple places at once. It's clearly not solid, not permanent, not independently existing. But here's the profound insight. According to Tibetan philosophy, waking reality has the same essential nature. It's also impermanent, also interdependent, also empty of the solid, separate existence we usually imagine it has. We just don't recognize this because we're so habituated to seeing things as fixed and real. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that getting hit by a bus is the same as dreaming about getting hit by a bus. Obviously, there are practical differences between dream states and waking states. But the Tibetan claim is that both states share certain fundamental characteristics, and training yourself to recognize these characteristics in dreams can help you recognize them in waking life too. I've been working with the Mindful Slumber app for about 8 months now, and one of the things I love about it is how it presents these concepts in a way that's accessible without being dumbed down. There's this whole series of guided meditations that help you understand the theoretical framework, but more importantly, they give you practical exercises to develop this kind of awareness. The app has this beautiful feature called Bardo Training, where you practice recognizing the gap between thoughts, the space between sleeping and waking, the pause between breathing in and breathing out. It's teaching you to notice these natural transition points in consciousness, because lucidity often arises in these liminal spaces. One of the fundamental practices in Tibetan dream yoga is called illusory body practice. During the day, you repeatedly remind yourself that everything you're experiencing, your body, the world around you, your thoughts and emotions, is like a dream, like an illusion, like a magical display. Now, when I first heard about this practice, I thought it sounded kind of nihilistic. Like, why would I want to think of my life as illusory? But that's not what it's about at all. It's not saying that life is meaningless or unreal. It's saying that life is fluid, changeable, interdependent. It's saying that the solid, separate, permanent self we usually take ourselves to be is itself a kind of dream. And when you really start to get this, not just intellectually, but experientially, it's incredibly liberating. You stop taking yourself so seriously. You stop getting so caught up in your stories and dramas. You develop what the Tibetans call flexible mind, the ability to respond to situations with creativity and compassion, rather than just reacting from habit. My journey into lucid practice. Let me share with you how this practice has actually unfolded in my own life, because I think the real-world application is more interesting than the theory. When I first downloaded Mindful Slumber, I was honestly just curious about the lucid dreaming aspect. I'd heard about people who could control their dreams, and it sounded like something fun to try. I had no idea I was signing up for what feels like a complete reconstruction of how I relate to consciousness. The app starts you off with really basic practices. There's this foundation course called Awakening in Sleeps that teaches you fundamental techniques for dream recall and reality checking. I started doing these simple exercises, looking at my hands several times a day and asking, "Am I dreaming?" Reading text twice to see if it changes. Setting intentions before sleep. For the first few weeks, honestly, not much happened. I was remembering a few more dreams, but no lucidity. I was starting to think, maybe I just wasn't cut out for this. But the app has this great community feature where you can read about other people's experiences, and I realized that what I was going through was totally normal. Most people don't become lucid immediately. Then, about a month in, something shifted. I was having this dream where I was trying to call my mom, but every time I dialed her number, I got someone different on the phone. First, it was my kindergarten teacher. Then it was a guy who wanted to sell me insurance. Then it was my own voice, but speaking a language I didn't understand. And in the dream, I remember feeling frustrated and thinking, this is ridiculous. Phone numbers don't work like this. That was my first reality check in a dream. I suddenly realized I was dreaming. Now, what happened next is pretty typical for beginning lucid dreamers. I got so excited that I immediately woke up. But even that brief moment of lucidity was profound. For just a few seconds, I had been completely awake and aware within a dream state. I had recognized the dream as a dream while still being in it. The Mindful Slumber app has these excellent stabilization techniques for exactly this situation. There are guided practices that teach you how to stay in the lucid state once you achieve it. Techniques like spinning around in the dream, rubbing your hands together, or simply looking at the ground and saying, "Increase clarity now." Over the next few months, my lucid dreams became more frequent and more stable. But more importantly, something else started to happen. I began to notice that same quality of awareness arising during my waking life. I remember I was in a particularly frustrating meeting at work. My boss was going on and on about some project deadline, and I could feel myself getting more and more agitated. But then I had this moment of recognition, where I suddenly thought, oh, I'm caught in a story right now. I'm taking this situation as much more solid and permanent than it actually is. And in that moment of recognition, something shifted. I didn't stop caring about the project or become indifferent to the deadline, but I stopped being completely identified with my frustration. I could see the emotion arising, acknowledge it, and choose how to respond rather than just reacting automatically. This is what I mean by lucid living. It's developing the capacity to recognize when you're caught in unconscious patterns, whether in dreams or in waking life, and wake up within those patterns. The app has this incredible feature called Daily Lucidity Practice, where you get reminders throughout the day to check in with your state of consciousness. It might ask you to pause and notice what thoughts are present, or to look around and really see your environment, or to ask yourself, what am I believing about this situation that might not be true? These micro moments of awakening during the day are just as valuable as the lucid dreams themselves. Maybe more valuable, because they're training you to be more present and aware during the 16 hours you're awake, not just the 8 hours you're asleep. The science of lucid awareness. Now, let's talk about what's actually happening in the brain when we become lucid, because the science behind this is absolutely fascinating. When researchers hook up experienced lucid dreamers to EEG machines, they can actually see the moment of lucidity happening in real time. There's a sudden increase in gamma wave activity, particularly in the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain associated with self-awareness, decision-making, and metacognition. What's remarkable is that this gamma wave activity during lucid dreaming is actually higher than what we typically see during normal waking consciousness. It's as if lucid dreamers are becoming more awake than usual, even while they're asleep. Dr. Ursula Voss at the University of Frankfurt has done incredible research showing that you can actually induce lucidity by stimulating the brain with gamma frequency electrical currents during REM sleep. Essentially, they're artificially creating the brain state associated with heightened awareness. But here's what's really interesting from the perspective of consciousness research. Lucid dreaming seems to represent a unique hybrid state. You have the vivid, often bizarre content of dreams, but combined with the reflective awareness we associate with waking consciousness. It's like your brain is running two different operating systems simultaneously. This has huge implications for how we understand consciousness itself. Traditional neuroscience has often assumed that consciousness is binary. You're either awake or you're not. But lucid dreaming shows us that consciousness is much more fluid and multidimensional than we typically realize. There's also fascinating research on what's called dream yoga effects, the ways that lucid dreaming practice can impact waking consciousness. Studies have shown that people who practice lucid dreaming regularly show increased mindfulness, improved emotional regulation, enhanced creative problem-solving abilities, and greater psychological flexibility. One study I found particularly compelling was done by psychologist Dr. Tadas Dumbriz. He found that lucid dreamers showed significantly better performance on tasks requiring insight and creative problem-solving. They were better at seeing problems from multiple perspectives and coming up with novel solutions. This makes sense when you think about it. In lucid dreams, you're constantly practicing the ability to recognize when your current perspective might be limited or inaccurate, and then shifting to a broader view. That's exactly the skill needed for creative insight and flexible thinking. The Mindful Slumber app actually incorporates some of these research findings into its approach. There are specific practices designed to enhance what they call cognitive flexibilities, the ability to shift between different conceptual representations of the world. For instance, there's this exercise where you practice transforming objects in lucid dreams, turning a tree into a person or changing the color of the sky. But the real point isn't just to demonstrate dream control. It's to train your mind to see that what appears solid and unchangeable might actually be much more malleable than you initially assumed. And this training carries over into waking life in surprising ways. I've noticed that I'm much better at seeing situations from multiple perspectives now. When I'm in conflict with someone, instead of just getting stuck in my own viewpoint, I can more easily ask myself, what story might they be telling themselves about this situation? How might this look from their perspective? This isn't just emotional intelligence, though it certainly helps with that. It's a fundamental shift in how you relate to your own perceptions and beliefs. You start to hold them more lightly, more playfully. You recognize that your current view of any situation is just one possible perspective, not the ultimate truth. Now I want to share with you one of the most transformative practices I've learned from working with Tibetan Dream Yoga, a nightly intention-setting ritual that's completely changed how I approach sleep and dreams. This practice comes from the traditional teachings, but I've adapted it using guidance from the Mindful Slumber app to make it more accessible for modern life. I do this every single night now, and it's become one of my favorite parts of my day. The ritual has 3 parts: preparation, intention setting, and surrender. Let me walk you through each one. First, preparation. About an hour before bed, I start what I call stepping down from the day. I turn off all screens, dim the lights, maybe light a candle or some incense. The idea is to create a clear boundary between day consciousness and sleep consciousness. I spend a few minutes reviewing the day, not analyzing or judging, just acknowledging what happened. What were the highlights? What was challenging? What emotions came up? I'm not trying to solve anything or make meaning of it all. I'm just creating a sense of completion with the day's experiences. Then comes the intention setting, which is the heart of the practice. I sit quietly and connect with what I most want to cultivate in my life right now. It might be patience, or creativity, or courage, or compassion. Whatever quality feels most needed. Then I form a clear intention for my dreams. Sometimes it's simply, may I become lucid and maintain awareness. Other times it's more specific. May I practice compassion toward myself in my dreams, or may I explore my relationship with fear. The Mindful Slumber app has this beautiful guided version of this practice. There's a different intention setting meditation for each night of the week, focusing on different qualities like wisdom, loving kindness, equanimity, joy. What I love about it is that it's not just about becoming lucid. It's about using the dream state as a space for cultivating positive qualities of mind. But here's the key, and this is where the surrenders part comes in. After setting your intention, you have to completely let go of any attachment to results. You're not trying to force anything to happen. You're simply planting a seed in consciousness and trusting that it will unfold in whatever way is most beneficial. This took me a while to understand. At first, I would set my intention and then lie in bed trying really hard to become lucid, almost like I was forcing myself to stay partially awake. But that's exactly the wrong approach. Lucidity arises naturally when the mind is relaxed and open, not when it's striving and grasping. So the final part of the ritual is this beautiful surrender, acknowledging that you've done your part by setting a clear intention, and now you're releasing control and allowing the wisdom of your deeper mind to work. I usually end with a simple phrase that I learned from the app. May this intention serve the highest good, and may I be awake to whatever unfolds. Then I lie down and let myself drift into sleep with a sense of openness and curiosity about what the night might bring. What's remarkable is how this practice has affected not just my dreams, but my entire relationship with sleep. I used to approach bedtime with a kind of unconscious anxiety, worrying about whether I'd sleep well, whether I'd remember my dreams, whether I'd feel rested in the morning. Now, sleep feels like an adventure. I'm genuinely excited about what I might discover in my dreams, and that enthusiasm, that sense of approaching sleep as an opportunity rather than just a necessity, has made the whole experience much more rich and rewarding. Even on nights when I don't become lucid, I often wake up with insights or a sense of clarity about something I've been working with in my waking life. It's as if the intention setting creates a kind of container that allows the deeper wisdom of the unconscious mind to surface. Practical steps for getting started. So, if you're feeling inspired to explore lucid dreaming and lucid living, where do you actually start? Let me give you some concrete, practical steps that you can begin implementing tonight. First, and this cannot be overstated, start with dream recall. You cannot become lucid in dreams you don't remember. Most of us forget our dreams within minutes of waking up, but this is a skill you can definitely develop. Keep something to record with right by your bed. I use my phone because I can make voice memos without even opening my eyes, but a notebook works fine too. The moment you wake up, before you move, before you think about your day, before you check your phone, immediately capture whatever dream fragments you can remember. Even if it's just a single image, a color, an emotion, record it. Often, writing down one detail will trigger the memory of other details. I've had experiences where I wrote down red bicycle and suddenly remembered an entire elaborate dream sequence. Second, start doing reality checks during your waking hours. Set a reminder on your phone to go off every couple of hours, and when it does, ask yourself, am I dreaming? And really examine your environment. Look at your hands. Count your fingers. In dreams, hands often appear distorted or have the wrong number of fingers. Read some text, look away, then read it again. In dreams, text often changes when you're not looking directly at it. Check digital clocks. Time behaves strangely in dreams. The key is to make these reality checks a genuine inquiry, not just a mechanical habit. Really question whether you might be dreaming right now. What evidence do you have that you're awake? This habit of questioning reality will eventually carry over into your dreams. Third, start practicing the intention-setting ritual I described earlier. Even if you don't become lucid right away, this practice will deepen your relationship with your dreams and begin to cultivate the quality of awareness that supports lucidity, if you want more structured guidance. And honestly, I think this makes a huge difference when you're starting out. I highly recommend checking out the Mindful Slumber app. The foundation course is free, and it walks you through all of these practices step by step. What I particularly appreciate about the app is that it doesn't just focus on techniques for becoming lucid. It provides a whole framework for understanding dreams as a spiritual practice, as a way of cultivating wisdom and compassion. Fourth, be patient with yourself. Most people don't become lucid immediately. It took me about a month of consistent practice before I had my first lucid dream, and several more months before they became regular. This is totally normal. Think of it like learning to meditate, or learning to play an instrument. You're developing a new capacity of mind, and that takes time and practice. The key is consistency, not intensity. A little bit of practice every day is much more effective than sporadic, intense efforts. And finally, remember that lucidity is not the ultimate goal. Awareness is. Some of my most meaningful dream experiences have been non-lucid dreams that nevertheless felt profound and significant. The practice is about cultivating a quality of open, curious awareness, whether you're technically lucid or not. As we wrap up today's exploration of lucid dreaming and lucid living, I want to leave you with one final thought. The boundary between sleeping and waking, between dreaming and real life, is much more porous than we usually imagine. The awareness you cultivate in dreams can transform your waking life. The mindfulness you develop during the day can enrich your dream experiences. It's all one continuous practice of awakening, one continuous journey of discovering what it means to be truly conscious. I've been doing this practice for 8 months now, and I can honestly say it's been one of the most rewarding things I've ever committed to. Not just because of the cool lucid dreams, though those are definitely fun, but because of how it's changed my relationship to my own mind, my own experience. I feel more awake during my days, more aware of the constant flow of thoughts and emotions, more able to respond rather than just react. I feel more connected to the mysterious, creative dimensions of consciousness that we usually ignore in our rush to get things done. In our next episode, The 4 Stages of Tibetan Dream Yoga, we're going to break down the traditional stages of this ancient practice with some relatable analogies that'll make this 1,000-year-old wisdom feel immediately accessible. We'll explore how each stage builds on the previous one, and how you can recognize where you are in your own practice. And for those of you who want to dive deeper, I'll end that episode with something special, a teaser about the app's Dream Pathway sequence, which offers a full immersive experience of these traditional teachings. Until then, I encourage you to try some of the practices we've discussed today. Set an intention before sleep tonight. Ask yourself a few times tomorrow whether you might be dreaming. Pay attention to your dreams, even if they seem mundane or nonsensical. Remember, every night is an opportunity to explore the vast, mysterious landscape of your own consciousness. Every dream is a teacher. Whether you remember it or not, whether you become lucid or not. Sleep well, dream wide, and may you awaken to the extraordinary nature of ordinary experience.